Stop that.
Cataclysmic myth involving the sun and moon. There are tales all around the world of the sun's light dying out, days of darkness, a new sun. Old suns, Maya we are in the 5th sun, Chinese we are in the 10th sun, Toltec we are in the 3rd. The sun standing still, the sun causing destruction by fire, there being no sun, moon or stars in the sky, the sun dimming, the moon falling, the sun falling, the stars falling, the sun rising in the west and setting in the east, the sun traveling too fast, too slow and the sun and moon traveling off their normal paths. Here is a good example of some of myths and scripture to add some initial weight. The third sun, or Era, is called Quiantonashi, Toltec deity, son of rain, because there fell a rain of fire, all which existed burned, and there fell a rain of gravel. The sandstone, which we now see scattered about boiled with great tumult, there also rose the rocks of vermilion color. Now, this was in the year Stekpatl, 1 Flint, it was the day Nui Quiahuatl, 4th rain. Now, in this day, in which men were lost and destroyed in a rain of fire, they were transformed into goslings, the sun itself was on fire, and everything, together with the houses, was consumed. Donnelly, I, Ragnarok, The Age of Fire and Gravel, N.Y.D. Appleton, 1885. There was a tremendous hurricane that carried away trees, mounds, houses, and the largest edifices. Notwithstanding which many men and women escaped, principally in caves, and places where the great hurricane could not reach them. A few days having passed, they set out to see what had become of the earth, when they found it all populated with monkeys. All this time they were in darkness, without. Page 76. Seeing the light of the sun, nor the moon, that the wind had brought them. Donnelly, I, Ragnarok, The Age of Fire and Gravel. The Algonquin Indians were located in eastern Canada and the New England states. She is the evil-minded woman who thus brings diseases upon men, who at the outset introduced pain and death in the world, our common mother, yet the cruel cause of our present woes. The ancient Algonquins believed brought death and disease to the race. It is she who kills men, otherwise they would never die. She eats their flesh and gnaws their vitals, till they fall away and miserably perish. Who is this woman? In the legend of the Muskes it is Chia, the moon, who was also goddess of water, and flooded the earth out of spite. Brinton, D.C., Myths of the New World, Philadelphia, David McKay, 1896. The Pawnee Indians of Nebraska are even more descriptive about what happened to the sun when the cataclysm occurred. In their legend they say that when the sun goes out, the world will come to an end. The legend. The old people told us that the morning star said that when the time came for the world to end, the moon would turn red, that if the moon should turn black it would be a sign that some great chief was to die, that when the moon should turn red the people would then know that the world was coming to an end. The sun was also to shine bright, and all at once that brightness would die out and the end would come. The old people knew also that when the world was to come to an end there were to be many signs. Among the stars would be many signs. Meteors would fly through the sky. The moon would change its color once in a while. The sun would also show different colors, but the sign which was to be nearest to the people was that the rivers and the creeks were to rise. Dorsey, G. A., The Pawnee Mythology, Part 1. The Pawnee legend mentions 6 of the points we mention in our theory: the flood, the high winds, the fire from the heavens, the moon changing color, the waters sloshing around, and finally the sun changing colors. we can forgive them for mixing up the order in which some of these occur, but after all, this legend had to have originated about 12,000 years ago, so we could expect some changes from the original legend. What is also interesting is that the Pawnee, like the other Indian tribes, knew that God is the one who brought this cataclysm down upon man. Dorsey, G. A., The Pawnee Mythology, Part 1. The Botocatos Indians of Brazil say that the destruction was caused by the moon falling on the earth. From time to time. Brinton, D. C., Myths of the New World, Philadelphia, David McKay, 1896. Muscas Indians of Colombia. At one time they associated the moon with flooding the earth out of spite. Same books as above, PL 56. Page 77. The Minahune people, who migrated from New Zealand to the Hawaiian Islands thousands of years ago, said that one of their gods, Kahana, brought back the sun after the sun had vanished, and the earth was dark for a period of time. Now we come to the legends of Kana, who restored the sun. In this legend, the evil chief, Kahiki, is the one who takes away the sun from the people. The legend goes as follows. Nayu treats roughly the messenger of Kaho'ola'i, ruling chief of Kahiki, and the chief in anger takes away the sun, moon, and stars from Hawaii. Yuli sends Kana with Nayu to bring them back. As Kana stretches to the sky to reach the light, Nayu dies of cold and is left behind, but Kana bends over to Kahiki and drops into the spring of two old relatives, who give him fire to guide him ahead and wind to bear him behind until he reaches the border of Kaho'ola'i's land. He finds Yuli's brother Manu'a guarding the pit, cave, down which the food is kept by the people below and handed up to those above. He puts down a plump black hand which his relatives recognize and fill, first with food, then with water, then with the birds called kewia, fish hawk, which signal the day, then birds and the cock that crows for dawn, finally stars, moon, and sun, all of which he places in the sky. The chief himself next emerges and returns with Kana to tour the land, restoring Nayu to life on the way. When Kaho'ola'i reaches Hawaii, he finds that Kana and Nayu have both died and he rules there many years. Beckwith, M., Hawaiian Mythology, Honolulu, University of Hawaii Press, 1970. The philosopher, Wentz, gives us the following description of what happened during the last cataclysm. When the sky, hostile to living beings, wishes to destroy them, it burns them. The sun and the moon lose their form and are eclipsed, the 5 planets leave their paths, the 4 seasons encroach one upon another, daylight is obscured, glowing mountains collapse, rivers are dried up, it thunders then in winter, hoarfrost falls in summer, the atmosphere is thick and human beings are choked, the state perishes, the aspect and the order of the sky are altered, the customs of the age are disturbed, thrown into disorder, all living beings harass one another. Velikovsky, I, Worlds in Collision. Another Taoist author, Huainance, says that when the earth and the sun leave their path, a tremendous flood will cover the earth. Velikovsky, I, Worlds in Collision. Throughout Chinese recorded history, the emperors of China have insisted that astronomy be studied to its highest attainable level, for in their mythologies, it is recorded that certain catastrophic events occur on the earth when particular celestial phenomena occur. One of the most important of these phenomena is a solar eclipse. A solar eclipse was considered a very evil omen. To quote from the Lamentations from the Shi King, Ode 9, Shikua Kikiao. The sun and moon announce evil, not keeping to their proper paths. Throughout the kingdom there is no proper order, because the good are not employed. For the moon to be eclipsed is but an ordinary matter. Now that the sun has been eclipsed, how bad it is! Grandly flashes the lightning of the thunder. There is a want of rest, a want of good. The streams all bubble up and overflow. The crags on the hilltops fall down. High banks become valleys, deep valleys. Page 78. Become hills. Alas for the men of this time! How does God not stop these things? Muller, F.M., ed., The Sacred Books of the East Volume 3. The Hindu book, Vedanta Sutras, also tells us that the world is periodically devastated and changes both name and form. The surface of the earth dissolves and is later produced new. In the book, Siddhapatha Brahmana, there is a good description of what the sun does at the end of the Yuga, world age. That one, the sun, bakes everything here, by means of the days and nights, the half moons, the months, the seasons, and the year, and this, Agni, the fire, the sun, bakes what is baked by that one, and baker of the baked, he is, said Bharadvagavagni, for he bakes what has been baked by that, sun. In the year these amounted to 10,800, he stopped at the 10,800. Muller, F.M., ed., The Sacred Books of the East, Volume 43. Hot rains came down from the heavens, scalding the flesh of the sinners. The entire time the deluge lasted, the sun and the moon shed no light. Ginsburg, L., The Legends of the Jews. The Tuxtleco Indians of Mexico, which says that the sun moved toward the east, traveling toward the east and the disappearance in the east. After the sun had stopped, they say the earth was visited by upheavals and earthquakes. Velikovsky, I. Words in Collision. The Maya and Aztec performed human sacrifices to appease their gods. This was done in order to prevent the sun from destroying them. Quiches Maya of neighboring Guatemala have a legend that states that the sun eventually did appear, but it was different from the sun they had seen prior to the destruction. And the sun, and the moon, and the stars were now all established. Yet was not the sun then in the beginning the same as now, his heat wanted force, and he was but as a reflection in a mirror, verily, say the histories, not at all the same sun as that of today. Nevertheless he dried up and warmed the surface of the earth, and answered many good ends. Bancroft, H. The Native Races, Volume 3 Myths and Languages. Now, there had been no sun in existence for many years, so the gods, being assembled in a place called Teotihuacan, 6 leagues from Mexico, and gathered at the time round a great fire, told their devotees that he of them who should first cast himself into that fire should have the honor of being transformed into a sun. So one of them, called Nanayuitsan, flung himself into the fire. Then the gods began to peer through the gloom in all directions for the expected light, and to make bets as to what part of heaven he should first appear in. And some said here, and some said there, but when the sun rose they were all proved wrong, for not one of them had fixed upon the east. And in that same hour, though they knew it not, the decree went forth that they should all die by sacrifice. Page 79. The sun had risen indeed, and with a glory of the cruel fire about him that not even the eyes of the gods could endure, but he moved not. There he lay on the horizon, and when the deities sent Lotli, their messenger, to him, with orders that he should go on upon his way, his ominous answer was, that he would never leave that place till he had destroyed and put an end to them all. Then a great fear fell upon some, while others were moved only to anger, and among the latter was one Sidley, who immediately strung his bow and advanced against the glittering enemy. By quickly lowering his head, the sun avoided the first arrow shot at him, but the second and third had attained his body in quick succession, when, filled with fury, he seized the last and launched it back upon his assailant. And the brave Sidley laid shaft to string nevermore, for the arrow of the sun pierced his forehead. Then all was dismay in the assembly of the gods, and despair filled their hearts, for they saw that they could not prevail against the Shining One, and they agreed to die, and to cut themselves open through the breast. Xochitl was appointed minister, and he killed his companions one by one, and last of all he slew himself also. Immediately on the death of the gods, the sun began his motion in the heavens, and a man called Tecuzistecatl, or Tezcatl, who, when Nanayuitzin leapt into the fire, had retired into a cave, now emerged from his concealment as the moon. Bancroft, H. The Native Races, Volume 3, Myths and Languages. Now began the struggle between the two brothers, Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl, the sun, which was destined to destroy time after time the world, with all its inhabitants, and to plunge even the heavenly luminaries into a common ruin. The half-sun created by Quetzalcoatl lighted the world but poorly, and the four gods came together to consult about adding another half to it. Not waiting for their decision, Tezcatlipoca transformed himself into a sun, whereupon the other gods filled the world with great giants, who could tear up trees with their hands. When an epoch of 13 times 52 years had passed, Quetzalcoatl seized a great stick, and with a blow of it knocked Tezcatlipoca from the sky into the waters, and himself became sun. For an epoch the earth flourished under Quetzalcoatl as sun, but Tezcatlipoca was merely biding his time, and the epoch ended, he appeared as a tiger and gave Quetzalcoatl such a blow with his paw that it hurled him from the skies. The sun disappears. The overthrown god revenged himself by sweeping the earth with so violent a tornado that it destroyed all the inhabitants but a few, and these were changed into monkeys. His victorious brother then placed in the heavens, as sun, Tlaloc, the god of darkness, water and rains. But after half an epoch, Quetzalcoatl poured a flood of fire upon the earth, drove Tlaloc from the sky, and placed in his stead as sun, the goddess Chalchiutlicu, the emerald-skirted, wife of Tlaloc. In her time the rains poured so upon the earth that all human beings were drowned or changed into fishes, and at last the heavens themselves fell, and sun and stars were alike quenched. 6p74. It would be when Tezcatlipoca should steal the sun from heaven for himself, in other words, when eternal night should close in upon the universe. Brinson, D.C., American Hero Myths, Philadelphia, H. C. Watts & Co., 1882. Page 80. From the prayer to Tezcatlipoca, the flying serpent god. Is it already fixed in thy divine counsel that there is to be no mercy nor pity for us, until the arrows of thy fury are spent to our utter perdition and destruction? Is it possible that this lash and chastisement is not given for our correction and amendment, but only for our total destruction and obliteration, that the sun shall never more shine upon us, but that we must remain in perpetual darkness and silence? That nevermore thou wilt look upon us with eyes of mercy, neither little nor much? Bancroft, H. The Native Races, Volume 3, Myths and Languages. In the Popol Vuh, 16th century, the Maya hero twins are finally transformed into sun and moon. Ixchel, Maya goddess of the moon, was sometimes depicted as the goddess of catastrophe, the goddess who stands by as the world floods. Many of her myths show her in a more benevolent light, as a goddess who refused to become a victim of oppression. She was also depicted as an old woman wearing a skirt with crossed bones, and she had a serpent in her hand. She had an assistant sky serpent, whom they believed carried all of the waters of the heavens in its belly. She is often shown carrying a great jug filled with water, which she overturns to send floods and powerful rainstorms to earth. Aztecalxalqui was the moon goddess according to the Aztec mythology. Her name means golden bells. She was the daughter of the earth goddess, Coatlicue, and the sister of the sun god, Huitzilopochtli. Calxalqui encouraged her 400 sisters and brothers to kill their dishonored mother. Coatlicue gave birth to Huitzilopochtli, Aztec sun and war god, after a ball of feathers fell into the temple where she was sweeping, rift, and touched her. Huitzilopochtli sprang out of his mother as an adult fully armed and savor her. Kotliku regretted such violence. Thus, Huitzilopochtli cut off Quetzalcoatl's head and threw it into the sky to form the moon. According to Maya mythology, before becoming the celestial objects that we see today, the moon and the sun were terrestrial creatures. The moon was a young lady, while the sun a brave hunter. They fell in love. After some events, they fled away together. The young lady's grandfather got mad at her and he had her killed. The dragonflies collected her body and her blood, and they put them in 13 hollow stumps. Meanwhile, the sun had been looking for his lover for 13 days. On the 13th day, he found the stumps. 12 of them gave life to harmful insects and snakes. They started filling in the entire world with their offspring. From the 13th one, the moon came out. She had come back to life. Page 81. The Utah Indians of California and Utah have a very detailed legend of the last destruction. They specifically mention the sun as being the cause of the fire. Buddha philosopher declares the sun to be a living personage, and explains his passage across the heavens along an appointed way by giving an account of a fierce personal conflict between Tavi, the sun god, and Tawats, one of the supreme gods of his mythology. In that long ago, the time to which all mythology refers, the sun roamed the earth at will. When he came too near with his fierce heat, the people were scorched, and when he hid away in his cave for a long time, too idle to come forth, the night was long and the earth cold. Once upon a time Tawants, the hair god, was sitting with his family by the campfire in the solemn woods, anxiously waiting for the return of Tavi, the wayward sun god. Wearied with long watching, the hair god fell asleep, and the sun god came so near that he scorched the naked shoulder of Tawants. Foreseeing the vengeance which would be thus provoked, he fled back to his cave beneath the earth. Tawants awoke in great anger, and speedily determined to go and fight the sun god. After a long journey of many adventures, the hair god came to the brink of the earth, and there watched long and patiently, till at last the sun god coming out, he shot an arrow at his face, but the fierce heat consumed the arrow and it had finished its intended course. Then another arrow was sped, but that also was consumed, and another, and still another, till only one remained in his quiver, but this was the magical arrow that had never failed its mark. Tawants, holding it in his hand, lifted the barb to his eye and baptized it in a divine tear. Then the arrow was sped and struck the sun god full in the face, and the sun was shivered into 1,000 fragments, which fell to the earth, causing a general conflagration. Then Tawants, the hair god, fled before the destruction he had wrought, and as he fled the burning earth consumed his feet, consumed his legs, consumed his body, consumed his hands and his arms, all were consumed but the head alone, which bowled across valleys and over mountains, fleeing destruction from the burning earth, until at last, swollen with heat, the eyes of the god burst and the tears gushed forth in a flood which spread over the earth and extinguished the fire. The sun god was now conquered, and he appeared before a council of the gods to await sentence. In that long council were established the days and the nights, the seasons and the years, with the length thereof, and the sun was condemned to travel across the firmament by the same trail day after day till the end of time. Donnelly, I, Ragnarok, The Age of Fire and Gravel, N.Y.D. Appleton, 1885. The Pawnee Indians of Nebraska are even more descriptive about what happened to the sun when the cataclysm occurred. In their legend they say that when the sun goes out, the world will come to an end. The legend, that when the moon should turn red the people would then know that the world was coming to an end. The sun was also to shine bright, and all at once that brightness would die out and the end would come. The old people knew also that when the world was to come to an end there were to be many signs. Among the stars would be many signs. Meteors would fly through the sky. The moon would change its color once in a while. The sun would also show different colors, but the sign which was to be nearest to the people was that the rivers and the creeks were to rise. Dorsey, G. A., The Pawnee Mythology, Part 1, 1906. Page 82. The Ojibwe Indians of the Great Lakes also mention in their legend that the sun caused great havoc on the earth. The legend is centered around a boy whose bird skin coat is burned by the sun. He swore that he would have vengeance. He persuaded his sister to make him a noose of her own hair. He fixed it just where the sun would strike the land as it rose above the earth's disk, and, sure enough, he caught the sun, and held it fast, so that it did not rise. The animals who ruled the earth were immediately put into great commotion, earthquakes. They had no light. They called a council to debate upon the matter, and to appoint someone to go and cut the cord, for this was a very hazardous enterprise, as the rays of the sun would burn up whoever came so near. At last the dormouse undertook it, for at this time the dormouse was the largest animal in the world, the mastodon. When it stood up it looked like a mountain. When it got to the place where the sun was snared, its back began to smoke and burn with the intensity of the heat, and the top of its carcass was reduced to enormous heaps of ashes. It succeeded, however, in cutting the cord with its teeth and freeing the sun, but it was reduced to very small size, and has remained so ever since. Donnelly, I. Ragnarok, The Age of Fire and Gravel, 1885. In the southeastern United States, we come to the Creek and Cherokee tribes. The Creeks have a creation legend similar to the one described in the Bible. They also say the earth was entirely covered by water. After a long period of time, the earth became populated with many, but something happened and the earth became angry and ate up a portion of her progeny. How the people started out on a journey toward the sunrise, how they crossed a river of slime, then a river of blood, and came to the king of mountains, whence a great fire blazed upward with a singing sound. This legend seems to allude to the red clay that when mixed with the water, appeared to be like blood flowing in the streams. The Cherokee tribe, also in the Gulf of Mexico, say that the sun was too close and too hot to the earth, and it burned up many things. The Mbukabi Indians of Paraguay are very specific in pointing out what caused the destruction. The destruction of the world was due to the sun. This orb once fell from the sky, but Mbukabi hastened to pick it up before it did any injury, and fastened it in its place with pegs. A second time it fell and burnt up the earth. Two of the tribe, a man and his wife, climbed a tree and escaped destruction. But a flash of flame reached them and they fell to the ground, where they were changed into monkeys. Brinton, D. C. Myths of the New World, 1896. The Ainu culture in Japan does not have what we would call a very clear self-explanatory mythology of the last cataclysm. Instead, the sequence of events that occurred is coded and concealed in some very fanciful mythologies. The main one being the legend of Izanagi. Izanagi. We would consider their idea of God. The legend tells us his sister, Izanami, the old sun, went to the underworld when she grew old and was about to die. The legend goes on. Page 83. After Izanagi had slain his son, the fire god, and brought into being new gods, a new sun, including dragons, he was seized with longing to see Izanami once more. Accordingly he set out to find her in Yami, the dark Hades of the underworld. When Izanagi reached the gloomy dwelling of his sister, she raised the door, and he spoke to her, saying, "Thine augustness, my lovely young sister. The lands that I and you made are not yet finished, so come back." 20p 357. This part of the legend is attempting to tell us that when the old sun disappeared, surely into the rift door dwelling, there was a period of darkness that covered the earth. Later on, the legend tells us that associated with the old sun is fire, thunder, lightning, and earthquakes. Eventually a new sun reappears and the earth is brought to life again. In other writings, Markandeya goes into greater detail of what happens during the destruction. After a drought lasting for many years, 7 blazing suns will appear in the firmament, the sun. Novas, they will drink up all the waters. Then wind-driven fire will sweep over the earth, consuming all things. Penetrating to the nether world, it will destroy what is there in a moment, it will burn up the universe. Afterwards many colored and brilliant clouds will collect in the sky, looking like herds of elephants decked with wreaths of lightning. Suddenly they will burst asunder, and rain will fall incessantly for 12 years until the whole world with its mountains and forests is covered with water. The clouds will vanish. Then the self-created Lord, the first cause of everything, will absorb the winds and go to sleep. The universe will become one dread expanse of water. Mackenzie, D. A., Indian Myth and Legend 1913. From Babylon Myth. When that millennium has fully elapsed, which is the second of the religion of the Mazda worshippers, the sun conceals itself. Then there will be 30 straight winters. 57 years after the sun goes dark, a new sun will appear in the sky. Muller, F.M., ed., The Sacred Books of the East, Volume 47, 1897. The idea of previous worlds and civilizations was well known to the ancient Jews. They believed that the previous civilizations had all been destroyed by cataclysms brought down upon them by God. They believed that some people perished by the deluge and that others were consumed by fire. It was believed that God summoned the angel of the face, the sun, to destroy the world. The angel opened his eyes wide, and scorching fires and thick clouds rolled forth from them. Ginsburg, L., The Legends of the Jews 1913. Isaiah 60 hours 19 minutes. The sun will no more be your light by day, nor will the brightness of the moon shine on you, for the Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. Page 84. The Nordics also have a legend describing the appearance of the new sun, which is called Dag. In the beginning of the battle, Fenris and Ormungandr belched forth fire and smoke of noxious, deathly vapors, which filled all heaven and earth with their poisonous breath. The red dust from the sun, the roar of battle filled the universe. The first benevolent god to perish was Odin, the sun. Eventually the other benevolent gods were also destroyed. The other gods who took part in the fray, and all the Aenir having now perished, Surtur suddenly flung his fiery brands over heaven, earth, and the 9 kingdoms of the raging flames enveloped the massive stem of the world Yggdrasil, and reached the golden palaces of the gods, which were utterly consumed. The vegetation upon earth was likewise destroyed, and the fervent heat made all the waters seethe and boil. The great conflagration raged fiercely until everything was consumed, when the earth, blackened and scarred, slowly sank beneath the boiling waves of the sea. Ragnarok, Day of Atonement, had indeed come. The world tragedy was over, the divine actors were slain, and chaos seemed to have resumed its former sway. Gerber, H. A., Myths of the Norsemen 1908. The only survivors from this godly race were Lifthrasir and his wife, Lif. After the cataclysm had passed, they emerged from their cave to repopulate the earth. In Norse mythology, we can find a similar story to Ru and Ketu, but with different names. Skull is a warg, wolf, that chases the horses Arvakr and Alsvithra, that drag the chariot which contains the sun, Sol, through the sky every day, trying to eat her. Skull has a brother, Hati, who chases Mani, the moon. At Ragnarok, both Skull and Hati will succeed in their quests. See Gylfaginning, chapters 38 and 51. Note the above words, at Ragnarok. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok is a series of future events, which include a great battle. Therefore this event doesn't occur at every sun and moon eclipse, but just at Ragnarok. Also in chapter 38, Sturluson says that there are many men in Valhalla, and many more who will arrive, yet they will seem too few when the wolf comes. High foretells that as part of the events of Ragnarok, after Fenrir's son Skoll has swallowed the sun and his other son Hati, Hrothfinnesson has swallowed the moon, the stars will disappear from the sky. The earth will shake violently, trees will be uprooted, mountains will fall, and all binds will snap. Fenrir will be free. Fenrir will go forth with his mouth opened wide, his upper jaw touching the sky, and his lower jaw the earth, and flames will burn from his eyes and nostrils. Fenrir is just another name for the destroyer. It is hidden in the Nordic legends behind many names, and the legend tells us that his children will swallow the sun and moon. Page 85. An Egyptian theory recorded by Herodotus said that during 11,340 years of Egyptian history the sun of 4 occasions altered his course, twice rising where he now sets and twice setting where he now rises. Stewart, J. A., The Myths of Plato 1960. Also from Egyptian and Celtic scholars in the Kolbrin, we find the heavens will burn brightly and redly, there will be a copper hue over the face of the land, followed by a day of darkness. A new moon will appear and break up and fall. The waters were purified, the sediment sank and life increased in abundance. The sun was not as it had been and a moon had been taken away. In a myth of the Luaya people of Kenya in East Africa, the sun and moon were brothers. The moon was older, bigger, and brighter, and the jealous sun picked a fight with him. The two wrestled and the moon fell into mud, which dimmed his brightness. God finally made them stop fighting and kept them apart by ordering the sun to shine by day and the mud-spattered moon to shine by night to illuminate the world of witches and thieves. www.mythencyclopedia.com web link. Ru and Ketu revisited. What recent mythology researchers know about Ru and Ketu is false. They all try to put their own idea on an already semi-fake story. They mix the myth with the fake NASA Ball Earth and Ball Planet's cosmology, so the result is messy. As we know, Ru and Ketu are the head and tail of the serpent demon, and this is often referred to as the Ouroboros serpent. Page 86. The Ouroboros, Greek for tail devourer, is found all around the world and on one of the many levels, symbolizes the cyclic nature of the universe, creation out of destruction, life out of death. The Ouroboros eats its own tail to sustain its life, in an eternal cycle of renewal. It is also related to flat Earth. It grew so large that it could encircle the world and grasp its tail in its teeth. It is also symbolized as covering the moon and sun in a figure of 8, with the head of a lion and tail of an eagle. Page 87. Where else do we see this lion and bird symbolism? Drum roll. The Ouroboros is a symbol of alchemical dissolution. He dissolves silver and gold, which are symbolized by the moon and sun. The serpent is known all around the world as the Milky Way, which we know as the Dark Rift. The Dark Rift, as I've shown in other works, Link 1, Link 2, has many myths of a serpent coming out and devouring the earth and sky. Ru is considered the serpent's, or dragon's, head, and Ketu is known as the serpent's tail. Ru and Ketu are originally symbols, deities, and archetypes of Cataclysm, that devour the sun and moon. Here is the myth most know. Just as Vishnu poured a drop of nectar into Svarbanu's mouth, the sun and moon recognized that he was actually an Ajra. Vishnu chopped him in half, but it was too late. A drop of the immortal nectar was already in his mouth. Thus the two halves, Ru and Ketu, were born. The head of the Ajra who ingested the immortal nectar became Ru, and the lower half, the body of the Ajra, became Ketu. Ru and Ketu are the head and tail of the demon, often referred to as the serpent. A lunar eclipse is connected to Ru. This happens when he tries to eat the moon, but it falls right out of him. Ketu is connected to the solar eclipse. It is believed that this immortal head from time to time swallows the sun, causing eclipses. Then, the sun passes through the opening at the neck, ending the eclipse. The body also turned into Ketu due to a moon, and it in turn swallows the moon on timely basis to cause a lunar eclipse. What the mythologists forget to mention is that this story was referring to the period of Cataclysm, and not to the eclipses. Page 88. It's the same story as in the Maya mythology and also Egyptian mythology, please read below. The sky world is a stage on which the players and events of cosmic ordering are made visible, while the underworld stage leaves them hidden from view. In the sky world, the Milky Way is on occasion seen as a serpent that swallows the souls of the recently dead. Also in the sky world, the two-headed celestial monster of classic Maya iconography could represent an ecliptic snake which takes the rising sun into its eastern mouth, to discharge it through its western mouth at sunset, the sun traveling through its body in its path across the sky, in much the same way that the sun was thought to travel through Nut's body in ancient Egypt. Parav.angelfire.com web link. This idea that Rahu and Ketu are planets came from people who tried to interpret the Vedic astronomy based on the ball Earth and ball planets belief. Side note, it seems that many of the Vedic scriptures were deliberately mistranslated, much has been distorted. One example is that they also distorted periods of time, so instead of a few thousand year cycles, they exaggerated it so much and wrote stupid things like 1.000.000 years, Yuga X, Yuga Y. Only the so-called scholars knew how to translate the ancient Vedic writings, and they did a great job. And for me, they intentionally distorted many ancient records. But rant over, let us press on. But ancient Hindu records tell us other things about Rahu and Ketu. Atharvaveda 13.1624 employs Ketu to mean ray of light. These 9 verses are taken from Rigveda 1.50.19, in the same order and more or less in the same form. They are also found in one or more other Vedic texts, Whitney 1905, Volume 2, p.722. More typically Ketu meant combination of fire and smoke. The Atharvaveda passage, September 19, 2010, refers to Ketu as an epithet of mritu, death. It either means a comment or literally as smoke banner to the smoke rising from a funeral pyre, Whitney 1905, Volume 2, p. 914. Atharvaveda 11.10.127 uses Ketu in the plural, Asaruna Ketava, Ridiculous. Here the reference seems to be to comets or meteors. Varamahira's Brayat Samhita, composed in 6th century CE but containing much older material, quotes a still earlier astronomer Garga on a class of 77 comets, called Aruna, which are dark red in color, Bad 1981, Volume 1, p.138. The revered Vyasa tells Dhritarashtra, Bhisma Parva 3.46, as follows. Cows are giving birth to asses, and elephants to dogs. Sons are enjoying sexual pleasures with their mothers. Idols of gods are laughing, vomiting blood, feeling sad, and falling off their pedestals on their own. Animals are being born with 3 horns, 4 eyes, 5 feet, 2 urinary organs, and 2 tails. Women are giving simultaneous birth to 4 or 5 girls, who immediately start singing, dancing, and laughing. Trees are flowering out of season. Lotus and water lily are blossoming on tree tops. Even coal, peacock and parrot are making fearsome sounds. There is a downpour of blood and bones from the sky. Page 89. It is in this background that even the more reasonable sounding descriptions of celestial phenomenon should be seen. A recurring theme is the reference at various places in the Mahabharata to, as if the occurrence of an eclipse was at par with Holocaust on Earth. Rahu has seized the Sunday, Bhisma Parva 3.11. Rahu is approaching the Sunday, Bhisma Parva 141.10. Rahu swallowed the sun most untimely. Salyaparva 55.10. Ru eclipsed the Sun and the Moon simultaneously. As Vamdaparva 76. 15, 16, 18. Meteors, Ulka, and earthquakes are also similarly invoked. As part of the celestial foreboding, it is stated that a very dangerous Dhumekatu has overcome the Nakshatra. This will bring destruction to both sides. This ill omen appears in the 4th century CE Buddhist text Sarjalakarnavadana as well. Continuing his listing of ill omens, Vyasa tells Dhritarashtra that the Svitagraha, white planet, has transgressed Siddhara, while the Purusagraha, harsh planet, has established itself between Siddhara and Sviti, Bhismaparva 3.11, 16. The translators have exercised their own discretion in rendering these terms. Svitagraha has been left untranslated, Sadatau. 1985. p.39, or equated with Ketu, Ganguli 1884-1896, Book 6, p.12. Purusagraha has been identified with Ri by one translator, Ganguli 1884-1896, Book 6, p.12, and with Ket by a different translator, Sadatau. 1985, p.39. The arbitrariness is obvious. As we have argued, it would be anachronistic to associate Ru and Ketu with a planet in pre-Varamahira times. Greek astronomical elements made their documented appearance in India in 149 CE when a Greek astro text was translated into Sanskrit by Yavanesvara. It was versified in 269 CE by Sfujivaja under the title Yavanajataka, Bangri, p. 1959. The versification was a significant development, because it signifies assimilation of Greco-Babylonian elements into Indian tradition. And yet, Vedic astronomical tradition remained extant even after the introduction of Yavana texts, as can be seen from passages in Sarjalakarnavadana, already referred to. Irrespective of the Nakshatra, when the sun or the moon is seized by Ru, the king along with his subjects comes to pain. Irrespective of the Nakshatra, when Ketu enters the moon, the neighboring enemy king gets the upper hand. When Dhumekatu establishes itself in the Pusya Nakshatra, then defeat an enemy's assault from all four directions is guaranteed. Veda 1999, p. 374, couplets 462,463, 466. As we have already noted, Dhumekatu in Pusya as a bad omen is mentioned in the Mahabharata also. It is significant that Ketu and Dhumekatu are listed separately and along with Ruandaratpada. Page 90. In later Iranian and Arabic mythology, the ascending node and the descending node Ketu become the head and the tail of the dragon Al-Jazir, a serpent linked to Cataclysm. Chapter conclusions. Not many people are looking into ancient cataclysmic myth with the flat earth viewpoint, or with even knowledge of chemtrails, so we are on new ground. But we can all see that an ancient story of our sky that exists with different archetypes all around the world just has to be based upon some larger truths. My theory is that there's a major cataclysm every so often that really shakes up all that is within the firmament, sky ceiling, sky dome. A new sun or a destroyer of some kind comes through the dark rift and wreaks havoc. The sun dies in the carnage and becomes the moon. The celestial bodies are obstructed during cataclysm, some lose their power, and some of them fall. Also, this obstruction of the sun and moon is probably made by the thick and black smoke that will cover the sky just as the cataclysm begins, possibly from the dying sun or dark rift. This is why the ancients feared the eclipses. They saw them as the cataclysm coming again, and they were scared because in ancient times there was a period without the moon. Page 91. So then, this thesis presents that during ancient cataclysm, the sky mechanism was changed. And any sign of disturbance since, like an eclipse, and the people have become frightened that the cataclysm will start again. What I would say currently is that climate change and chemtrails may be related to something coming soon, and for sure the powers that be would know this and be acting accordingly. It isn't something that will be put on Fox News, that's for sure. I'm not trying to scare anyone, I'm just piecing together information. Remember that everything you were taught is wrong. By design. Page 92. Afterward. The moon is a mystical enigma, and cannot be solved with rigid science alone. Her secrets are there to be found, but we have to stroke her from many different angles. We need to be resolute in our research, because there are government agencies employed to lie and send people the wrong way. The exact science and mechanism behind the sun is probably beyond our understanding, or it's that we just don't have access to better information sources. The exact way the sun and moon function would reveal also a big part of the way the enclosed Earth mechanism functions, and that would be a huge find. Not one person has the absolute right to claim their complete flat Earth theory is the correct one and that all else is confusion. But by working together, individually studying, debating, being open, and creating tangible pieces of work, we can figure it out together. I prefer not to spend my time guarding and ring-fencing my work against the opinions of others. I prefer to collaborate and progress with more research, and then throw it into the pot. I am happy to be corrected. We were all wrong with the ball model, and this is a new paradigm with new information in its infancy. This work is offered freely, but one is more than welcome to give support to my research and site via www.wakewakey.com, where one can find hundreds of articles, videos, podcasts, and other literal offerings, spanning nearly a decade. Page 93. Come and join the Facebook group, Flat Earth Advanced, the Moon. You are welcome to email me at wakeywakey@hushmail.com, however I cannot promise a prompt reply, due to the increase of incoming traffic recently. Much credit goes to other researchers, and also to those who have created the images I've included. I hope it's okay that I've not yet sourced all of the creators, researchers, and artists. Special mention to Ashley L. Legard Webster for her flattening of globe images. Super special credit goes to the man in the shadows who I think has read every book, pantheon, and myth ever known. This work can be copied freely as I'm not a fan of copyright, which I see as an old paradigm concept. With love for truth. MX.